Welcome to our session today. Today we're going to be looking at thinking, reasoning, and problem solving. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to start just by looking at the ground rules again, and then we'll go through the session, and then we will do the questions and answers afterwards. So let us start by sharing the screen. There we go. All right. So the ground rules are to firstly, please keep the microphones muted until the question time, and also at question time, please click on the hand to indicate that you want to ask the question, and you may post questions in the chat during the session if you prefer to rather just type the questions out. And to please also keep your video turned off during the session, and to remember to complete the attendance register, which you will find in the chat as well. You'll find the link to that. So we're starting with thinking. So thinking is the way we mentally process information. And through thinking, we create representations or symbols of things. So there are three main types of symbols. The first is images. So images are mental representations that have picture-like qualities. So visual images, auditory images, and forming these images help us to remember information or unrelated things and solve problems. So, for instance, we can imagine a face to try and remember someone's name. We can create like a scenario to remember a bunch of things like a shopping list or something. And we can try and have an image to try and remember a maths equation or something. The next is concepts. So these are building blocks of thinking which help us to organize knowledge. So these can be physical objects like food, or it can be abstract things like democracy. It can represent properties of an object like a color, like for instance, if you want to buy new bedding and then you're able to think about what that specific color might look in your bedroom. Or it could be referring to relationships between objects like bigger and smaller, so which suitcase would be more suitable for all my clothes. And then we have language. Language is a way to make sense of things and a means to communicate with others. We can also have inner speech, which is a way to direct our thoughts and actions. So we do a lot of inner speech where we process thinking, talking to ourselves in our heads. So language and thought don't necessarily have to go together. For instance, many of our daily tasks, we don't necessarily have to verbally express something. So when I'm driving, I don't have to say, now I need to put my foot on the brake, or now I need to change the gear. It's just something that we do with our inner thoughts. So reasoning is the next concept. Now, if you had any issues with the first concept, which was thinking, please do leave your comments or questions, and then we will look at those. If there's anything urgent, please let me know so that we can address that before we reach our section on reasoning. Okay, it doesn't look like anybody has any quarrels at the moment, so we'll continue with reasoning and then we can answer questions later. Using different bits of information to reach a conclusion. Okay, this is what reasoning means. So to reason, we use premises and conclusions. So a premise is an assumption that something is true. So it's basically like evidence that support our conclusions. So a conclusion would obviously be then the final statement, the thing that someone is trying to prove. So we have deductive reasoning and inductive reasoning. So deductive reasoning deals with the fact that a conclusion is drawn after two or more premises. So if a premise is true, then the conclusion is going to be true. So for example, all swans are white. So Jill is a swan. Therefore, the conclusion is that Jill is white. Now, if swans were white, then this does make sense, right? But now the problem comes in that potentially we could have black swans. So if your premises are not true, then the conclusion is also not going to be true. So if we assume that only white swans exist, then the premises will lead to the conclusion. But just be careful of incorrect premises. So inductive reasoning, on the other hand, is where conclusions are based on premises, but the premises does not guarantee the conclusion. So, for example, if Jennifer always leaves for school at 7 a.m., Jennifer is always on time. So Jennifer assumes that if she leaves for school at 7 a.m. today, then she will be on time. So generally we would think that this does make sense and that most likely she will be on time. But we can't really conclude that she will be, because what happens if there's traffic, or if there's a puncture in the tire, or if someone's caused an accident and blocked the road? Then our next part of this session is problem solving. Steps in problem solving include identifying the problem and defining it clearly. So you have to recognize what the problem is. So the problem in this case, we're going to use just an example, is that the dog keeps eating my shoes. So the first time she did this, I thought she was naughty, but she keeps doing this. So this is now a problem, okay? And the definition I have of this problem is going to determine how I solve it. So if I define the problem to be me leaving my shoes laying around, then the solution would be to pack them away. But if I define the problem to be the dog not being trained properly, then I would send her for training. So we explore different strategies in order to try and solve problems. The first is trial and error. So we only pack new shoes away. If that doesn't work, we'll pack all shoes away. If that doesn't work, we take the dog to training. Or we use a heuristic approach. So we look at all the shoes the dogs have eaten to try and determine if there's like one specific type of shoe that she's liking. Is it only shoes that are laying on the floor? Is it any shoe that she sees? Is it only heels or what? So for instance, we go from the most likely conclusion to the least likely. So we look, maybe she only likes eating heels, so we'll take the heels away and see if she eats the other shoes or if she leaves the others. So the next would be to explore possible solutions. So think of everything that you could think that could help and see which one is the most feasible option. So like making more storage space for the shoes, creating closed containers where the dog can't reach the shoes, take the dog to training. Which one of those would be most easy and most feasible for me to do? Like, do I have enough storage space for all the shoes, or do I have enough money to take the dog to training? Evaluate and learn from the solution. Sometimes the solutions could create problems or turn into problems. So you have to see if it actually works, the thought that you have. So putting shoes in boxes, maybe I can't then see them, so I forget about them, I can't find them. Or the dog might not be obedient at training. These are all things we have to consider. So when we have a moment where an answer becomes clear, it's called insight. It's like our aha moment. And this we reach through reorganizing the elements of a problem, ignoring things that are irrelevant, selectively combining information that didn't seem to relate at first, comparing new problems with old information or information about problems solved previously. So this concludes our session for today. And stop sharing the screen, and then there we go. So that's what we've done for today. If anyone has any questions, you're welcome to raise your hand, or you're welcome to also type a message in the chat box. Otherwise, if you don't have any questions now, but maybe over the week you come up with questions, you think of a few, then you're welcome to post them in the discussion forum on our MyUnisa group. I will also be posting the link to this session there so that you're able to go back and look through it again for future purposes, or if there was something that was unclear or something that you wanted to see again. Please do remember to fill in the attendance register before you leave. And then we will have our next session next week, which is on the human nervous system. Thank you all.